Just a minute ago, nobody expected anything unusual to ever come out of George Strait's ranch. For decades, the land had been known for its quiet routines, loyal workers, and the same warm Texas sunsets George himself had always loved. But everything changed the morning a buried wooden chest, something far older than the ranch itself, was pulled from the ground. And the moment it was opened, the calm of that peaceful land was replaced with a chill that no one could explain. The day started like any other, with ranch hands making their usual rounds and checking the outskirts of the property. But as they reached an older section of land that hadn't been touched in years, they noticed something strange. The soil looked different, as if it had been disturbed long ago, but never settled the way untouched earth normally does. At first, they thought it was just erosion. Yet the more they looked, the more they sensed something unnatural beneath the surface. One of the workers pressed his boot into a soft patch of dirt and felt wood give slightly underneath. That alone was odd. There were no fences or structures ever built in that spot. Curiosity turned into caution as they cleared the area, revealing a set of rotted planks arranged almost like a cover. No one could figure out why they were there. The ranch's history didn't mention anything being built in that exact location, but once they lifted the planks, the truth became impossible to ignore. Beneath the loosened earth was the top corner of an old chest, weathered, aged, and clearly out of place. It looked as if someone had not lost it, but purposefully hidden it. And that single detail sparked the tension that carried into everything that came next. As they dug deeper, the chest slowly came into view. Its wood was darkened with age, reinforced with metal brackets that had turned a dull, oxidized gray. For something buried in Texas soil for so long, it was surprisingly intact, almost as if someone had sealed it with care. But the most unsettling part wasn't its condition, it was the markings. Scratched into one side were a series of symbols that didn't match any ranch brand, cattle mark, or tool design the workers recognized. Some thought it looked like old initials. Others said it resembled the kind of markings travelers in the early 1900s used to leave on belongings during long journeys across rural land. But none of that explained why it was deliberately buried on George Strait's property. And that's when the unease really started settling in, because this wasn't the kind of thing someone simply forgets. This chest had been hidden with intention, and if there was intention, there was a story behind it. A story nobody expected to uncover. Still unsure of what they were dealing with, they carefully pried open the chest, hoping they'd find some harmless explanation. Instead, they found something that only deepened the mystery. Inside the chest lay a collection of items that didn't seem to belong together. At the top was a faded cloth bundle, wrapped tightly around a stack of brittle papers. The writing on them was nearly impossible to read, more like smeared ink than actual letters. Beneath the papers lay a silver pocket watch, its glass cracked, its hands forever frozen at a time that somehow made the air feel heavier. Next to it rested small personal belongings, a locket, a worn-out leather strap, and what looked like the remains of a journal. Every item looked like it carried a personal story, yet none of them matched each other. It was as if the chest held pieces of multiple lives rather than just one. But the strangest detail wasn't the items themselves. It was the overwhelming sense that someone had placed them together intentionally, as if hoping they would never be found. Rumors later spread online, saying that the items seemed eerily similar to objects mentioned in some of George's earliest songs. Though fans admitted it was just speculation. Nothing was confirmed, and George never made any statement linking the chest to his music. However, the workers weren't focused on fan theories that day. They were focused on something else, something they found buried at the bottom of the chest. And it changed the entire direction of the discovery. Buried beneath the other items was a small rusted plate with a name scratched into it. Barely readable, but just enough to stir a memory in one of the older ranch hands. He recalled hearing his grandfather speak about a drifter who had passed through the area generations ago. A man who carried everything he owned in a wooden chest and was rumored never to have made it to his final destination. The name wasn't perfectly clear, but it was close enough to spark speculation. Still, this was only a rumor, an old family story passed down with the same uncertainty as local folklore. But what made things even more unsettling was the realization that the chest had been buried exactly where old maps marked a small resting area used by travelers decades before George ever bought the land. It wasn't solid proof, but it suggested that the chest could have belonged to someone lost to history. And that single connection gave the entire discovery a heaviness that none of the ranch workers were prepared for. Because if the chest truly carried the belongings of someone who never left this land, then what they found next would only complicate things further. When they lifted the final bundle from the chest, no one knew what to expect. Inside was an old photograph, faded, creased, and nearly falling apart from age. The face in the picture was blurred, but the setting was unmistakable. It looked shockingly similar to a section of what is now George Strait's ranch. That alone sent a wave of discomfort through the group. Some believed it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone had taken the photo somewhere nearby, and over time, the land boundaries shifted. Others felt it was too specific to brush off. The number of similarities between the photo's background and the current ranch landscape made it hard to ignore. But the biggest debate came from one small detail in the corner of the photograph. The same symbol carved into the chest's outer wood. No one could explain it. No one could trace it, and no one could agree on what it meant. Word began to spread quietly through the ranch. Nobody was sure how long it would remain a private matter. And before long, whispers leaked into the online world, where the story took on a life of its own. The moment the first rumor surfaced, someone claiming George Strait's ranch workers found something bizarre buried underground. The online world erupted. Forums filled with theories faster than anyone at the ranch expected. Some people believed the chest belonged to a forgotten ranch hand. Others were convinced it was part of old Texas folklore. A few even suggested it might have been left by someone who passed through the land during hard times, hiding their belongings with hopes of returning one day. Signing off, none of these theories had proof. Every claim was speculative, fueled by curiosity rather than facts. But the mystery only deepened when someone pointed out the matching symbol seen on both the chest and the faded photograph. Suddenly, users began digging into archives, old records, and historical mentions, hoping to connect the symbol to something meaningful. Even though the theories grew wilder by the day, one thing remained consistent. Everyone agreed the discovery felt intentional, not random. And as the story spread, attention slowly shifted toward the only person who could address it directly: George Strait himself. As the online speculation grew louder, the atmosphere on the ranch shifted. Workers who had once seen the land as steady and predictable now found themselves glancing toward the unearthed spot every time they passed it. And as the story made its way onto fan pages, discussion boards, and even a few small news blogs, the question everyone kept asking was simple: What does George Strait think about all this? George, as always, kept things private. He wasn't the type to rush in front of cameras or stir up attention. People close to him said he took the discovery seriously, but quietly, treating it less like a spectacle and more like a piece of history that deserved respect. A ranch worker later mentioned, carefully and only off the record, that George seemed unusually thoughtful the day he was shown the chest. Not alarmed, not unsettled, just reflective, like the discovery tapped into something deeper. Those who knew him well said that George always believed land carried stories, some visible, some buried, and the chest was no exception. He reportedly insisted it be handled gently, preserved, rather than discarded. While he never confirmed what he personally thought about the items, his reactions suggested he understood the importance of honoring whatever past they came from. Still, one thing remained frustratingly unclear. Even with George's calm response, nobody could explain the one detail that had baffled everyone from the beginning: the symbol carved into the chest and the photograph. And that unanswered question set the stage for the final, most mysterious part of the entire ordeal. After the chest was secured and the items cataloged, a historian from a nearby town was quietly contacted to look at the markings. The hope was simple: someone would identify the symbol and put the mystery to rest. But when the historian examined it, his reaction only deepened the puzzle. He admitted the symbol resembled markings used by certain travelers and ranchers in the early 20th century. But he couldn't trace it to any specific person, group, or record. It was familiar, but unclaimed. The same applied to the photograph. Even after enhancing it and comparing the landscape with old images, no one could definitively prove when or where it was taken. The land in the background looked almost identical to George's ranch before modern fences were added. Yet every attempt to confirm it led to more uncertainty. Dates didn't line up. The materials in the chest didn't match a single clear era, and the frozen hands on the pocket watch hinted at a moment in time that nobody could connect to a real event. This lack of answers gave the entire discovery an eerie weight. It wasn't frightening in a dramatic way. It was unsettling in that quiet, lingering way that makes people stare a little longer at the horizon, wondering what else the land might be hiding. Workers who had been there during the excavation said that even after everything was cleared away, the ground never felt the same again. It held a heaviness, a memory of something that refused to fully reveal itself. Some locals began suggesting that the chest belonged to someone who never got the chance to tell their story. Others believed it was simply a remnant of the land's long, unrecorded past, one of those secrets that slips through history without explanation. Whatever the truth was, one thing became undeniable. The chest didn't just hold objects, it held a presence, a reminder. And even George Strait, with all his experience and calm composure, seemed to sense that some mysteries aren't meant to be fully understood.